is the Herdline News.
Yeah, I bet she didn't appreciate that.
She didn't like that at all. And told me, by the way, after I got the job, she said, I didn't like that answer at all.
But did you really do it? Did you tell her you were serious?
Yeah, it was like 5:30. I wanted out of the building. I've been flying all day. I did 2 interviews, and I wanted to go have a glass of wine, a piece of salmon, and go to bed. And I just thought about wine, and she asked, and I thought, yes, that does. It's like having a nice glass of wine. She just kind of stared, and there was no noise in the room.
Yeah,
and I thought,
that's not what you want to say. So it appears that Rondo has one major regret about his decision to sit away from his teammates in Wednesday's loss, and that is that all the attention is going on him instead of LeBron's big achievement. He is more annoyed at the people who are criticizing him rather than praising LeBron. He wrote on Instagram, "Let me help y'all out. Since everyone wants to overanalyze, gaslight, and overinterpret situations, let me help y'all with your due diligence. The real story that everyone should be talking about right now is how my teammate LeBron James accomplished a huge milestone in last night's game. It shows little kids that don't come from privilege that success is attainable. It shows that no one can tell you how great you can be. Most of y'all made a career out of discussing LeBron James, and y'all can't pay the man some respect. Since y'all missed it, let me do it publicly. Congratulations, LeBron, on everything. You deserve all the success and happiness that God and the universe has to offer. Congratulations, my brother. Keep being great."
well, I think LeBron's received a lot of congratulations over his career. He's earned all of it. So I think yesterday, or 2 nights ago, was a little bit of a dud. And I think we are in the opinion business and stated, as did the LA Times and the LA stations, that it kind of felt underwhelming for the moment.
Well, I mean, we did not talk as much about Rondo as we did about LeBron. Although
Right.
Rondo was a story, him sitting away from his teammates. He's also been informed that he can't do that. That's league rules. You can't sit in those seats. So he said he's not going to do that moving forward. I get the point that he's trying to make. Like, we're kind of focusing on everything else except for this incredible accomplishment. But it's hard to focus on that incredible accomplishment amidst what's going on with the season. And LeBron's made it pretty known that he has a lot of power and a lot of say in what's going on. So he has to bear some of the blame of this. Like, sometimes you have great moments in the midst of a valley, and that's just what it is. Like, that should have been celebrated. I agree. And it should have been a huge moment in sports. We all watched history. Someone who's been debated with Michael for basically his entire career, passing him in the all-time scoring list is a big deal, but it's not a good season. Like, there's a lot going on. It's hard to just pop out of that and be like, wow, incredible. And then, you're going to be on limited minutes for the rest of the year. Like,
yeah. It's just been
weird.
Optically, physically, emotionally, it's just been a bad year. Andrew Luck had a lost season. Michael Jordan broke a leg. This was just LeBron's one dud season. He gets one. 16 years, he gets a dud. This was a dud.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So the Thunder moved ahead of the Blazers in the standings last night with a thrilling 129-121 overtime victory. Paul George finished with 32 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals.
Wild game.
Westbrook added 37 points and 7 rebounds, also had 8 turnovers.
They could meet in the playoffs.
Yes, and that would be a great series.
Oh, it'd be a great. These two are a really interesting matchup. You have a star guards, very good wings. This could end up being, to me, the best first-round playoff series of all of them in the NBA.
Yeah, it would be must watch for sure. Well, Billy Donovan had high praise for Paul George. He said, "I'm happy for Paul. Last year was a transition for him, playing his first year for us and having free agency at the end of the season. He's gotten settled in and has played the best basketball of his career."
No, I think he's had the best season by any player in the NBA. Giannis and Paul George, to me, have had the two players. Now, again, everybody's in the James Harden. I feel with Giannis and Paul George, I get true two-way players.
I don't know. I kind of feel like everyone is in on James Harden, obviously, but I think for the MVP conversation, it's kind of come down to Paul George and Giannis. I do think that it will go to Giannis just because of the standings.
Yeah, and people feel like he's the next thing. It's kind of a cool award for Giannis. Like, if he got it,
he's fully deserving of it.
Yeah.
It's not a knock on either one of them if they don't win. Giannis is fully deserving of it, and Paul George has an incredible season. But I do think it's going to go to Giannis. And we talked a lot about Giannis yesterday. Great player. He's not polarizing.
No.
So it's hard to put him in that category with LeBron and Jordan and them for that reason. Finally, Antonio Brown will not be traded to the Bills, as GM Brandon Beane confirmed. And according to Pro Football Talk, there are very few options left for the Steelers to trade Brown. Mike Florio wrote, "The Steelers currently don't have many suitors for Antonio Brown, and apparently that's because the Steelers are still holding out for a first-round pick for Brown's services. Per a source with knowledge of the situation, several teams are waiting for the Steelers to reduce their asking price before pursuing Brown aggressively.
That makes sense. That's my gut feeling is somebody's just waiting to drop him to a third.
I mean, every other team but the Steelers have leverage in this department because the Steelers clearly want to get to move away from him.
Yeah.
Antonio Brown doesn't want to be there, so every team that wants him can just wait, really until the draft. Like they have time to hold out on this situation.
Yeah.
So
good stuff, Joy, with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
So one of the guys we really depend on is Albert Breer, lead content strategist at the Monday Morning Quarterback. And let's go right now to Albert Breer via the Coward Global Satellite Network. So, okay, you're Pittsburgh today. Joy just had the story. People are looking for the Steelers to move off a first-round pick. You know, I still go back to Albert. He's a six-rounder. You got 74 touchdowns and 11,000 yards. Pigs get fed, hogs get slaughtered. If you gave me a second or a third, I'd move off him. What are you hearing what the Steelers are demanding?
Well, if the Steelers had a first-round pick, I think he'd already be gone. That's the sense I get, at least. And what the Bills were working with the Steelers on over the last few days was just a little bit less than that. I also don't think that the Steelers are going to give him away. And I think it goes beyond the compensation, Colin. Part of this for the Steelers is about setting precedent. They've always been one of the more player-friendly teams in the league. They've always been willing to accept big personalities in their building. And this is the first time in a while that's really boiled over, both with Le'Veon Bell and with Antonio Brown. And so I think part of this is about setting the right tone going forward for the Steelers, too. And that means not giving them away. If they were going to give them away for, say, a fourth or a fifth round pick, let's just say that hypothetically, what sort of message does that send to the rest of the locker room?
Yeah.
He's under contract for the next 3 years. Like, he raises a stink, and then they give him away, and they let him sort of dictate where he wants to go. I just think for the Steelers, a big piece of this isn't just about getting the right kind of compensation back. It's also about setting the right sort of tone going forward, because the way they've set up their organization over the last 4 or 5 decades has always been a place where they can take on big personalities, where players can be themselves. And, part of this, again, is going to be about drawing lines. That's why I think they're being very, very careful about where they go in these talks.
By the way, the Raiders name surfaced, and it was interesting. Yeah. It was interesting. I said, you could have kept a younger Amari Cooper. He's not as good as Antonio Brown, but he's younger and cheaper. I feel like if the Raiders went out and got him, it would feel like they're just kind of making it up as they go. At this point, there is a New England feel to them where they'll pay their quarterback Derek Carr, but outside of that, they're not paying for a gigantic star. They want draft picks and younger, cheaper labor. So when I look at them and the Gruden rumors with Brown, I think, okay, if you go get him then you're just making it up as you go. You don't really have a plan because you had a younger, cheaper receiver. Do you buy the Gruden rumors with AB?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll take you back to last week. Twice last week, I was given a set of 3 teams that are interested or that were talking with Pittsburgh. And in both cases, I was able to rule 2 of those teams out. It was 4 teams across the board. And the one team in both cases that I wasn't able to rule out was the Raiders. So, look, I think that they'd be interested in Antonio Brown. I think the price tag, as is the case with a lot of other teams, is the issue here. And maybe not just the draft pick compensation, but also the contractual price. And I think that that's something that's worth looking at here because that came into play with Buffalo. The Bills were given permission, I'm told, to talk to agent Drew Rosenhaus, and they balked at the idea of giving him a new contract. I'm told there was another team that was deep involved in this that backed out after they discussed a new deal with the agent. My understanding is Antonio Brown wants a completely new contract, wants to be the highest paid receiver in the league once again. And that's what's making this even more difficult. Not only do you have to take on Brown the person, not only do you have to give up the draft pick compensation to get him, but you're also probably going to have to give him a brand new contract on his terms. And that's a lot to ask, Colin. Not only are you taking the risk of, again, everything that Brown brings with him, but you're also giving up draft picks and a new contract. That's a big part of the issue here. And so I think the Raiders are one of the teams that's genuinely interested. It's just going to take the price coming down a little bit for them to really, really be at the point where they'd be comfortable going forward.
Listen, generally when I hear rumors, there are things I connect the dots. And there is one connect the dots scenario I keep thinking about. And so just hear me out. It'll take 40 seconds. Arizona absolutely has a connection to Kyler Murray through Cliff Kingsbury. They have a bad offensive line. It wouldn't hurt to get a jolt playmaking quarterback back there to at least momentarily solve it as you rebuild the O-line and don't get Rosen hurt. Josh Rosen now, Arizona's paid him the guaranteed stuff. He is cheap. And New England needs a backup, and I bet you he grades higher than every quarterback in this draft. They have 12 draft picks. Albert, this seems so obvious that New England would give up a second or a third to get Rosen, who cost you nothing for 3 years. He's got a Brady intellect capability. This Josh Rosen thing, of all the teams, where do you think now that Washington's out? Well, what do you think?
I think you're going down the right path. Now, I think part of the issue here might be just sort of who Josh Rosen was coming out of UCLA, and the Patriots would have to wrap their heads around that. Remember, Josh McDaniels worked with Jay Cutler in Denver, and a lot of the comparisons from a personality standpoint that Rosen has drawn have been right to Cutler. But I think you're thinking the right way here, Colin. If you're one of these teams, if you're a New England or a Green Bay or a Pittsburgh or the Chargers, you're one of these teams that has an older, experienced franchise quarterback and isn't going to be drafting high enough to get his replacement, you're going to have to think creatively sometime soon about getting the next one, because you're probably not going to be able to do it the conventional way and spending a top 10 pick to get one. This is an answer for all of those teams. If you're the Los Angeles Chargers, why wouldn't you look at the idea of dealing off the 28th overall pick to bring Josh Rosen home to Los Angeles and sit for a year or two behind Phillip Rivers?
Wow.
I think for all of those teams, it actually does make some sense, because you're looking at it, again, you won't be in a position where you're going to be able to draft the next one because you're too good for that. So if I'm one of those teams, I very seriously look at that. At the worst, what this will get you is a very, very competent backup with starting experience at a cheap rate over the next 3 years. And the upside is that you have the answer for the next 10 to 15.
Finally, Jay Glazer,